Welcome back to another edition of Dave Smith Unleashed. And you know something that's really been bothering me I want to touch on here up in a couple of minutes, the wussification of sports and the pussification of men in general here on the next edition of Dave Smith Unleashed. Before we get started, thanks once again to our great sponsor, MTS Transportations, for all your trucking, freight, and shipping needs. There's only one place to go. MTS Transportations, the best in the business, the best there is. And of course, if you want to support the show, if you want to support Dave Smith Unleashed, make sure you use MTS Transportations for all your freight shipping and trucking needs. And thanks to all of you subscribers there as we continue to grow, as we continue to hit our goals here, and as we try and make Dave Smith Unleashed one of the great sports podcasts out there. So thanks again to all you subscribers, and thanks to going to our YouTube page and liking and subscribing and sharing and commenting on the YouTube page. So I love it when you comment on the YouTube page, and I love it when you comment on my Twitter handle, my X handle, because I love going back and forth and chatting with all of you listeners, all you subscribers out there. So my Twitter handle is @DaveSportsGod, @DaveSportsGod, and you know how to get me on YouTube and Dave Smith Unleashed. All right, let's get started here. It just bothers me to no end, the wussification of sports. And let's stick with the big three here. Football, basketball, and I want to close with baseball because I really want to emphasize baseball now that we have the playoffs going on and we're close to the World Series, a sport that I used to love before the complete pussification, wussification, and that goes for the other sports as well. And can we agree in general? Let's get frank here. We really don't hold back the language here. We have a generation of pussies now as men. When I see some of these young kids out here, and I know I sound like a get off my lawn guy, like a crotchety old man here. But when I see what's going on, you know, with my daughter and her circle of friends, and the way that young men are acting these days, it's a generation of pussies. Don't stand up for anything. It seems like we have no men left. They allow themselves to be bossed around. They allow themselves to be milquetoasts. They allow themselves to have no backbone, no spine. Well, my grandfather's generation, can you imagine the World War II generation looking back and seeing what we have now? Can you imagine if we're attacked by some foreign power? How many of these wussies do you think would immediately sign up and want to fight for their country and volunteer? Not many. My father told me a great story. He said he was 16 years old, I think, when World War II broke out. And the Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor. And let me tell you, my grandmother was a mother hen. She was overprotective of my father and his brother, my uncle. Didn't like them going out and playing, didn't like them playing football, didn't like them playing sports, always worried about them getting hurt. Really didn't want them to do anything physical because she was always concerned about them getting hurt. She tried to turn them into mama's boys. But I tell you what, when the Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor, she walked into their bedroom and said, you two, you march down to the recruiting station tomorrow morning and volunteer. Your country needs you. And that's not a request, that's an order. And she was more than willing to send her two sons off to war when she was scared to death. She wouldn't even let them play football. But can you imagine this generation? Wow, if we get attacked and we're asking for volunteers, good luck. Good luck. I think we need a forcible draft to get enough fighters over there. But anyway, let's get to the sports thing. Let's start with the National Football League when we talk about the wussification of sports. People talk all the time about how great Tom Brady is, and you're not going to get any argument from me. Is he the greatest quarterback of all time? Yes. And it's difficult for me to say that as a lifelong fan of the San Francisco 49ers and somebody who loved and admired Joe Montana. And I always thought Joe Montana was the greatest quarterback of all time, but it's got to be Brady. 7 Super Bowl wins, and he played effectively till he was 45 years old. See, that's the rub, though. As great as Tom Brady was, the only reason he was able to play until the age of 45 was because of the rules. You put him in the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, even the 90s. There's no way he lasts to 45. You know, quarterbacks, about 35 was the end for quarterbacks back then because they took such a beating. Remember, defensive rushers got a step and a half where you could level the quarterback after he released the ball. There's There's really no such thing as helmet-to-helmet contact. It was just go ahead, free rein on the quarterback. You could hit him flat, straight in the back when he had his back turned and take him apart. So there's no way Tom Brady would have lasted till 45, playing back in those days. As great as he was, he'd have been done at 35, 36, maybe 37 back then. And my God, the defensive backs can't hit people anymore. Receivers used to be afraid to go over the middle. Remember when George Atkinson and Jack Tatum were waiting back there? Those days are long gone. You can't hit the receiver anymore. They're running free, fearless down the middle of the field, and that's why it's hard to stop the modern passing game, because you're not allowed to hit the quarterback anymore, and you're not allowed to hit receivers. And I used to have George Atkinson on my show, the great former Raider, several times, him and Jack Tatum. And I used to say to George, what would you do for a living now? What did you study in college? And he said, why are you asking me that? I said, well, you sure couldn't play in the NFL these days. And he said, what, you're saying I'm not good enough? The players are better? No, George, I'm not saying that. You were as good or better than any corner in the National Football League, any safety when you played. But you were so violent and so vicious out there, you and Jack Tatum, with the hits you put on, you'd have owed the league, you'd have paid back all your salary and then some with all the fines you've been getting. You'd have had to play for free. What'd you study in college? He said education. I said, you would have made a hell of a teacher because the way you played, you couldn't play in the NFL nowadays. And he agreed with me. Yeah, I think you're right. I'd have had to play for free. It's just a completely different game now. The NFL's been wussified. Now, the NBA, are you kidding me? Rick Barry is a frequent guest on the Dave Smith Unleashed podcast and on my national radio show. And boy, if you want to get him going, talk about load management and the new one, burst management. And he always said to me, I hated sitting on the bench. I wanted to play 45 minutes. I wanted to play the entire game, which I did many times. I hated sitting on the bench. And now you see the best players in the NBA, this load management. Well, Kawhi Leonard won't play back-to-back games the last couple of years. But he was on the Clippers, one of the highest paid and best players in the NBA. And that goes for a lot of players. They sit out when they're healthy. They sit out when they're not injured, and the NBA allows it. Now, I know they say they're cracking down on it, and they say they're going to fine. They're not doing anything about it. If a player sits out a game when he's healthy, they should get one warning, and then they lose a first-round draft pick the second time it happens. That'd stop it real fast, wouldn't it? And now, when Zion Williamson was playing with the Pelicans over the last couple of years, they had a new one, burst management, B-U-R-S-T. And that took it to a new level past load management. Anytime he took a hard first step to the basket, like pushed off that back foot and made a strong drive to the basket, made a burst, he automatically came out of the game because of the trainer's orders. Burst management. They're turning these guys into pussies these days in National Football League and in the National Basketball Association. Rick Barry just goes ballistic when I bring up load management and burst management. And hey, how about another one? What is this second unit stuff? Every team in the NBA now, 6 minutes into the first quarter, 5 new players come in, the second unit. Even if a guy's hot, even if a guy's playing well, even if the team's on a roll, here comes the second unit. No seat of the pants coaching, no common sense, no thinking, well, we're on a roll right now. I'm going to leave these guys in. No, here comes the second unit. And every team does it. Now, starters play about 35, 36 minutes a game these days. They're sitting out, well, games are 48 minutes. They're sitting out at least a quarter, the best players in the league. And what is this load management stuff? They can't play back-to-back nights. Back when Rick Barry and Wilt and Jerry West and Elgin Baylor and those guys were playing, they played back-to-back sometimes they played back-to-back-to-back, 3 games and 3 nights in 3 different cities. And were they traveling on private jets? No. Were they flying charter? No. They were sitting with the normals, with the regular people on regular flights, a lot of time in coach. And they weren't staying in 5-star hotels. They were staying in economic hotels. And Stu Lance told me one time when he was on the road, he had to wash his own uniform in the bathtub. And they play back-to-back. They didn't have personal trainers. They didn't have dietitians. They didn't have nutritionists. They weren't staying in 5-star hotels. They didn't have masseuses. They weren't flying on private jets where they could stretch their legs out. They didn't have to wait in airport terminals to get a seat. And yet they can't play back-to-back. with all those advantages. Dietitians, masseuses, nutritionists, weight training, rest, and they can't play back-to-back games. Load management. Let me catch my breath here before I get into baseball. That's what I really wanted to emphasize today, the pussification of baseball. Let's take a break right now. Let's pay some bills. Let's hear from our great sponsor, MTS Transportations. Dave Smith Unleashed, brought to you by MTS Transportations. And mention the Dave Smith Unleashed podcast and get 20% off on your next shipment for all your shipping, trucking, and freight needs. There's only one business to call, and that's MTS Transportations at 800-640-6873. MTS Transportations, 800-640-6873. If you want to talk about the pussification of baseball, they have turned this generation of pitchers into the biggest pussies maybe in the history of sports, and it's not their fault. It's management, it's their agents, it's upper management, general managers, whatever. These guys are so brittled up. They're like they're like prime loin or lamb. They're like little lambs. Well, they're going to bruise up if they pitch more than 5 or 6 innings. Their arms are going to fall off, and they're going to need surgery. Can you imagine Don Drysdale and Nolan Ryan and Bob Gibson with pitch counts, with quality starts, with 6-inning starts? I had the privilege of interviewing Don Drysdale shortly before he passed away. And he was just livid about, and even back then, about the bullpens and the quality starts and the pitch counts and all this stuff. And he said, you know what? You've got to pitch complete games. I pitched every 4th day. I finish usually what I start. It's my game. I want to finish what I start. And if Walter Alston came out and was looking toward the bullpen, I told him to kiss my ass, get back into that dugout, get out of here. And he said, the arm is a muscle like anything else. You've got to strengthen it. You've got to exercise it. You've got to throw a lot. He said, I threw between starts. I played long toss between starts. I stand on the warning track and play long toss and try to throw the ball to home plate. So I threw hard between starts. I threw from the warning track. I played long toss. I pitched every 4th day, and I pitched complete games. That's the way we did it. Bob Gibson the same way. There's a famous story about Bob Gibson. I think it was a scoreless tie in the 9th inning. The opponent had a runner on base. And Red Shaindienst, his manager, got up to the top step and took a couple of steps onto the field. Looked like he was coming out to take Bob out of the game. Bob turned around and saw what was coming. And he said, get your ass back in that dugout. And yet Red took another couple of steps heading toward the mound. Gibson walked all the way down to the chalk on the third baseline and met him and said, you get your freaking ass out of here. Unless you want a new set of teeth and go to the dentist, get your ass out of here. This is my game. And Shaindienst turned around and went back to the bench. See, that was the mentality back then. It's my game. I'm going to finish what I started. Well, see, that's back when men played baseball. That's back when real men were pitchers, not the pussies like we have today. These guys, 5 or 6 innings in, they're looking over their shoulder at the dugout. Get me out of here. Get me out of here. I'm tired. I'm getting near 100 pitches. I'm near my pitch count. And you see 6, 7, 8, 9 pitchers every game in the box score. What happened to Nolan Ryan? What happened to Bob Gibson? What happened to Don Drysdale? I had Goose Gossage on my show several years ago. And he was obviously old school and not a favor of pitch counts and quality starts. And he said he was offered a couple of jobs to be a pitching coach in the major leagues. And he said, okay, I would love to do it. I'd love to get back into the game, but there's one caveat. There's one rule. No pitch counts. None. 4-man rotations and no pitch counts, and nobody would hire him. No, we're not going to do it. That's not the way the game is played today. He said, okay, nice meeting you. Thanks for asking. Thanks, but no thanks. And I was thinking about this when I'm watching some of these postseason playoff games. Now, the first one that comes to mind, if I owned the Detroit Tigers, I would have fired A.J. Hinch, the manager, after that closeout Game 5 against the Seattle Mariners. Now, here was the situation. Tigers are up 2-1 after 6 innings against the Seattle Mariners. It's a Game 5 closeout game. It's 2-2. It's a best-of-5 closeout. The best pitcher in baseball. Last year's Cy Young Award winner. This year's Cy Young Award winner. Tarek Skubal on the mound. And he is dealing 6 innings in. He's retired the last 12 hitters in a row. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, every 3, 4, 5, 3rd, 4th, 5th, and 6th inning. 1, 2, 3. 12 in a row out with 9 strikeouts. Nobody reached base, and he struck out 9 in a row. So obviously he was dealing. Obviously he was on a roll. Obviously he has to stay in the game. I got a question for A.J. Hinch. Tarik Skubal is the back-to-back Cy Young Award winner because he's going to win it again this year. Is anybody in your bullpen as good as him? Well, of course not. That's a dumbass question. Of course not. This is a Game 5 closeout game. Do you want your best guy out there, win or lose? Evidently not. Do you want to go to the American League Championship Series? And to get there, you're going to need to leave your best pitcher on the mound. Evidently not. After 6 innings, unbelievably, A.J. Hinch took him out of the game and went to the bullpen, and he cited pitch count. There are no pitch counts in the postseason. There are no pitch counts in closeout games, A.J. Hinch. Do you hear me? What happened? Well, of course, the Tigers' bullpen gave up a run, and then they wound up losing in extra innings, of course. In my opinion, if you keep Skubal in the game, he's got 3 innings to go. He's retired 12 in a row with 9 strikeouts. He'd have cruised through those last 3 innings, and the Tigers are in the American League Championship Series against the Toronto Blue Jays. I'd have fired Hinch if I owned the team. I've had him in my office after the game. What the hell are you doing? This is the best pitcher in baseball. He's retired 12 in a row. He struck out 9 in those 4 innings. We're 9 outs away from the American League Championship Series in a closeout game, and you're going to put one of those stiffs in from the bullpen? Look me in the eye. Look me in the eye, AJ, and tell me that those guys in the bullpen are better pitchers than Tarik Skubal. And if he said yes, then you're fired. If he said no, you're fired. Then either way, you're fired. Number 1, for taking him out of the game, or number 2, for thinking you're better served by putting in a bullpen guy over the best pitcher in baseball. Absolute stupidity. He cost him the game. He cost him a spot in the American League Championship Series. Again, the pussification of pitching. Whoa, the pitch count. Whoa. There's a pitch count in a Game 5 closeout game? There's a pitch count in a closeout game where he's retired 12 in a row with 9 strikeouts? What the hell are you talking about? Ugh. I'm watching the Dodgers and the Dodgers and the who are they? I've already the Brewers. I've already forgotten who they're playing. Dodgers and Brewers, Game 1. And I'm watching the game, and Blake Snell is pitching a gem for the Dodgers. 8 innings in, Dodgers are up 2-0. Snell is pitching a 1-hitter with 10 strikeouts. Why in the hell, Dave Roberts, would you ever take him out of the game? You talk about dealing. A 1-hitter with 10 strikeouts through 8 innings. Of course he goes out for the 9th inning and finishes the game. You're up 2-0. And the Dodgers bullpen has been terrible all year. You're going to trust those bums out there with a 2-0 lead? Sure enough, the genius, Dave Roberts, always got to be a genius. Always got to make one last move. The Gene Mauch theory. Gene could never leave things alone. He always had to be the little general, always had to be a genius and make one extra move that would cost his team a win. What happens? Dodgers up 2-0. They go to the 9th inning. The Brewers get a run. It's 2-1. And they load the bases against 2 Dodgers relievers. And boy, they're staggering to the finish line. They allow a run, and the bases are loaded. The Brewers are 1 hit away from winning the game. And then this dummy for the Brewers, the pitch comes right at his leg. He should have stood there and let it hit him. Then it's a hit by pitch, bases loaded, run comes in, it's a tie game, and the Brewers probably win. The idiot jumps out of the way and doesn't let the ball hit him, and then he strikes out and the game ends. But the bottom line is, why is Snell out of the game in the 9th inning with a 1-hitter and 10 strikeouts? And the bullpen gives up a run and then loads the bases, and you got to sweat it out because he did something stupid by removing your starting pitcher, Dave Roberts? Game 2. Similar situation. Yoshinobu Yamamoto. Yamamoto is pitching a gem. The Dodgers are up 5-1 late in the game. And I'm thinking to myself, boy, he's not going to do it again, is he? He's dealing. Leave him in there. Let him finish the game. And miracle of all miracles, and I got to give Roberts credit for this. He left Yamamoto in, and he pitched a complete game. And the sad thing is, see, this is when you talk about all the pussies playing baseball these days. It's the first complete game in the postseason since 2017, when Justin Verlander did it 8 years ago. So Yamamoto pitches a complete game. And I'll give Roberts credit for this. He was asked about leaving him in there in the ninth inning after the game, and he said, you know what? I learned my lesson from the night before. Snell was pitching great. I took him out, and the bullpen almost blew the game. So I said this time, you know what? Stay out there. Let's finish what you started. And that's what all managers should do. They're too worried about these brittle little sissies getting a little bruise, a boo-boo on their elbow or on their shoulder. And he's going to have surgery if he goes more than 6 innings. Bullshit! Get out of here with that nonsense. Pitch a complete game. This is the postseason. Again, there's no such thing as a pitch count. There's no such thing as a quality start. There's no such thing as a 6 or a 7 inning start when one of your best pitchers is out there. He's dealing, he's ahead, and he's cruising. You leave his ass out there, and he gets a complete game. Do you hear that, A.J. Hinch? Do you hear that, Dave Roberts? Do you hear that, managers all over baseball? God, it just makes me crazy. They've turned this generation of pitchers into the biggest pussies maybe I've ever seen in the history of sports. And again, it's not the pitcher's fault. They've been pussified by their managers, by their coaches, by upper management, by general managers, by the agents, by the owners. And a lot of these managers are old school guys, came up in the 70s and 80s and 90s in the era of complete games. And they've been denutted. They've been detesticled. Their testicles have shrunk up and fallen off because they're following orders from these jerk-offs who are telling them that you can't go complete games anymore. So let me know what you think. Please hit me up on Twitter at Dave Sportscott. And, of course, if you want to know when the next Dave Smith Unleashed is going to be posted, follow me on Twitter at Dave Sportscott. And I'm always talking about when the next show is going to be on, what the subject is going to be, who the guest is going to be. And, of course, always go to the YouTube page and comment, and subscribe. Comment, and subscribe on the YouTube page on Dave Smith Unleashed. Always loves to kick it around and hear your comments on there. And, of course, we can't let this thing go without thanking all the subscribers, thanking all of you for sharing and commenting, and all you do on the YouTube page and on my Twitter page. And the biggest thanks, once of all, again, to our great sponsor, MTS Transportations. Without them, none of this would be possible. So make sure for all your freight, shipping, and trucking needs, you want to support Dave Smith Unleashed? You want this show to continue? Well, of course, go to MTS Transportations and give them all your business for your freight, shipping, and trucking needs. They are the best in the business. All right, that's it for me on Dave Smith Unleashed. Let me know what you think about the wussification of sports on the YouTube page or on my Twitter handle. And we'll talk to you next time right here on Dave Smith Unleashed.